In this video, I'm going to show you how to use Jenkins to build and run an image using Docker. Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. Docker is a valuable tool for developing and deploying applications. It can seem complicated when you're first getting started, so I'm going to map out a process step by step for you. I'll be using Python examples, but you can easily adapt this to any language of your choice. If you want to follow along, you're going to need the following items. Number 1, a Jenkins controller instance. Number 2, an agent instance with Docker installed. For this video, both of my instances are using Linux, but the examples will be simple enough that you can adapt them for either Windows or Mac OS. You'll also need a text editor to edit your files. In my case, I'm using Visual Studio Code. To set up an environment like the one that I'm using, refer to the video in the upper right-hand corner, or take a look at the description of this video. You'll be running Python inside your Docker containers, but you don't need Python installed on your development system. That's your first lesson. You can use Docker to run software that isn't installed on the host system. We'll start with an empty directory and create your first Docker file. A Docker file contains a list of directives describing how to build your image. Create a text file named Dockerfile with these contents. The first line tells Docker which image to start building with. Your Docker file will always start with a from line. Over at Docker Hub, you can find images with almost any Linux distribution and almost any software package ready to use. In this case, we're using the lightweight Alpine Linux distribution with the latest version of Python installed and ready to go. The second line contains the command that Docker will run by default when this image is loaded. When you use cmd, you pass it an array. The first is the executable, and the rest are the arguments that will be passed to Python. You're running Python with a one-line program. The image puts Python in the search path, so you can call it without worrying about where it's located. The -c argument tells Python that the code you want executed follows. Note that just -c print wouldn't work. Each string must be its own item in the array. Let's take a look at the Jenkins file. Now we're going to build the image using Docker by using Docker build. Docker build is the command for building an image. It expects to find a file named Dockerfile in the working directory. The second argument -t is a tag used to refer to the image. As you can see, Docker prints out each directive in your Docker file. Once it's done, the image is placed in your local Docker repository. Now let's go ahead and run this image. We do that by running Docker run. Docker run creates a container using your image. Pass it the name that you used in the build step. And there it is, your first image built with Docker running in a container. Passing your Python code to Python on the command line isn't how you would normally structure an application. So it isn't how you want to build an image either. Let's make this a bit more practical. First, let's take the print statement and put it in a Python source file named hello_there.py. Let's update the Docker file so it can use this source file. The copy directive tells Docker to copy the source file into the root of your image. Docker doesn't accept relative paths that point outside of the build folder. In other words, /path won't work. So if you're going to check your code into source control and run it on a different system, it's easiest to work with a folder that contains your Docker file and build from there. Let's get back to our image. We run Docker build, and we see that it built successfully. Next, we're going to go ahead and do a Docker run, and we can see that it still works. So now you've built an image that takes a Python source file and executes it. If you want to update the code, you update hello_there.py and rebuild the image. That image is your packaged application. Let's take this application one step further. We'll add the Python requests library, retrieve a web page, and print the request status. In order to do this, we're going to change the contents of hello_there.py to, and now let's rebuild the image. And finally, rerun it. Notice that the script won't run because we haven't loaded the requests module into the Python environment. We need to modify the Docker file one more time. If you're not familiar with pip, it's the packaging tool for Python. We're using it to retrieve the latest version of the requests library to call it from inside of our script. The run directive in a Docker file runs an external program as part of the image build process. It's not related to the Docker run command you're used to using in order to run your container. Let's rerun this build with the new addition to the Docker file. Take a look at step 2 of 4 in the build output. You can see the output from pip as it installs requests. Finally, rerun the container. You can see that retrieving the Google search page succeeded. In this tutorial, you use Jenkins to build an image from a Docker file and then use that image to run a container. Then you made the application easier to maintain by adding a source file to the image. Finally, you customized the image by installing additional software packages for your application. Docker is a powerful tool for bundling applications with their dependencies and running them on multiple platforms with no additional changes. Now that you know how to build images, start using it for your projects. If you haven't subscribed to CloudBeast TV yet, why not? Click on subscribe and then ring that bell in order to be notified anytime there's new content available on the channel. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at CloudBeastDevs. Or you can follow me at Darren Pope. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.